Today we're talking about 3 techniques to save your marriage from divorce. I'm Dr. Paul Jenkins, and I brought Vicki with me today to keep me honest about this, because you might be thinking, what does he know about saving his marriage from divorce? Well, so far, we've done okay.
You've invested a lot in this relationship of your marriage, and there is hope if you're willing to try some things that are a little bit different. These 3 techniques can make a difference.
I'm going to jump on the first technique.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Go for it.
I call it metacognition. Now, that's a fancy psychobabble word, but it basically means thinking about thinking.
Right.
Notice for a moment that you can do this, and be careful with it, you can hurt yourself. But you can think about your own thinking. This is extremely important, because part of what gets in our way in a relationship is our own thinking. It's not so much our circumstances, it's the stories we're creating about our circumstances.
I still remember this very sweet, quite elderly lady in our neighborhood that once said, "Don't believe everything you think." And
I remember that.
I think that it's really important to realize that sometimes there are thoughts that we're having, and think about those thoughts, whether they're really a circumstance that you could prove in court of law or anything, or if they're just a story. Not just, but if they are a story, it's okay. Everybody has thoughts. There's nothing wrong with that. There is a lot of power once you just recognize that it's a thought, when you think about your thoughts.
Vicki, you're absolutely right about this. And I remember one of my coaches, as I was working with her on building the business, and I'm telling her everything that's going on in the business. And I'm like, and this is happening and that's happening and I can't quite seem to get this done or whatever. And I told the whole thing. And then she simply said this, "That's a thought." And
No, it's not.
I'm like, wait, what am I paying you
I just
for?
said all these facts. That's
Right,
what you
I
think.
thought I was telling her my circumstances.
Right.
These are the facts. And she simply said, "That's a thought." And honestly, I had never even considered before that this story in my head was just that. It was a story in my head. I remember you and I were watching a video by Brené Brown, and she suggested a tool that I think is really powerful. And it's in communication. So when you're talking with your spouse or your child or whoever it is that you're in communication with, you say, "The story in my head is..."
It opens up so many options to have a conversation about something. So this is really
Right.
good in any, maybe a conflict or something you really want to discuss with your spouse. You say, okay, the story in my head right now is blah, 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 blah. That way it's presenting it as a thought that's going on versus you do this, or I feel this, or
Right.
you do that.
It takes the accusation out of it, and it's an acknowledgement of exactly what we're talking about here. Metacognition. I'm thinking about my thinking. I'm noticing something about my thinking right now, and we remove it from the circumstance so that the person that we're talking to, and our spouse in this case, isn't feeling accused or judged. Once we've done the metacognition, and we've identified the story, technique number 2 is to put the story on the shelf. Meaning, let's just take that story, wrap it up in a nice little package for safekeeping, and stick it on a shelf over here, opening up the possibility for a different story.
Yeah, you said once we've recognized metacognition, it's not like you see it once and you're done. And I think that's a big thing with this story is like, oh, this is a story about my business, like you said. Okay,
Right.
I'm just going to set that aside for a minute and see what else I can learn.
What else is possible? In fact, here is a relationship-saving question. You ready? I'm going to give it to you. What else might this mean? Potentially relationship-saving, because the stories in our mind are infused with all kinds of meaning. If I have a story, for example, that my spouse is dissatisfied with me, she thinks that I'm an idiot, or whatever, okay? Now, I'm totally making this up.
Right.
Of course, you would never have that story about me, or not. But noticing that it's a story, and that means that my marriage is in trouble, it means that I'm probably going to have to defend myself really soon on all kinds of things, and I'm making meaning about it. So the question that I suggested is, what else might this mean?
And I don't think it's always about, it could even be, what else might this mean about the way you're showing up as well,
Yes.
or the thoughts you're having. So it's not always directed at maybe the way I'm interpreting things of my spouse, but maybe the way I'm showing up. What else could this mean?
Well, you make a really important point, because I think there's a story about what my spouse is thinking. That's a story in my head. And there's a story about me and what I'm all about.
Right.
They're both stories, and they both might be getting in the way. So when we put it on the shelf for a minute, we're creating space, we're opening up some room for another possible story. What else might this mean?
That's a powerful question to ask yourself.
In one of my trainings recently, we were doing a trauma-informed training for a bunch of coaches that I'm certifying. And this came up. Hurt people hurt people.
Right. Yeah.
So think through the meaning of that. When people are hurting, they sometimes act out in ways that are hurtful. I remember cornering a cat when I was a kindergartner.
I remember you
I've told
telling
you
me
this story, I think.
Yeah.
And this cat was in our yard, right? And I'm going to defend this yard. And so I had a stick. And I went out and I corner the cat against the tomato cages over on the side of the house. And this cat jumped on me and bit me. I still have a scar on my leg. Well, this is a kitty.
Yeah.
It's a little cat, right? Why did it bite me? Why did it hurt me? Because it was scared. It was hurting. Yeah. Hurt people. And usually when your spouse is, it's because they're hurting. And if we can get back to that alternate
what else
meaning,
could this mean?
We might show up differently.
One thing to really remember is that the enemy is not your spouse.
Ooh,
and so when you can,
rich.
when you can pull out the story, you can often see that it's just a story. I mean, there are times when you think, he's ruining this. He's not even trying to do X, Y, Z. But if you can kind of go back and say, okay, the enemy is not my spouse. He's not my enemy. We have a similar goal. We're obviously going about it in a different way. So what else could it mean? And I've used this before with us. It's just going about it in a different way. It's not that you're trying to ruin the way I want to do it. You're just going about it in your way. I'm going about it my way. It was a story that it was the wrong way, but now I see that you're not the enemy. You're not trying for a whole different theory or outcome than I am.
A fight implies adversaries.
Right.
Enemies are going at it, right? And in a marriage, it's really obvious when you back off from a little higher perspective that we are not enemies.
Right.
We chose each other. We are a team. We are united here, right? But when we approach things in different ways, sometimes we get it in our head that, this is the enemy, and I need to defend myself, and I need to do a counterattack. The Gottmans did a lot of research on this. John and Julie Gottman. You can look up their book. It's called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And the Gottmans showed that there's a lot of times when, to protect ourselves, we go into what they call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. And that never works to move your relationship forward. It always works to create separation. Right. So when we feel like we're pulling apart or we're on separate sides, I think that's a good thing to remember.
And remember, when you can look at it at the story, as your thoughts as just the story, sometimes you might find out it's that story that's actually the enemy. It's the story that's causing the contention or the separation, right? And so that's one of the big keys in understanding technique number 2.
And I love the way that you said that, Vicki, because if we identify the story as the enemy, we can kick the story out and invite a new story to come in. For the next technique, we want to also give you a tool. And it looks like this: 9 principles that are guaranteed to save your marriage. You want this? Go to the URL on the screen, drpauljenkins.com/9 principles, the number 9, the word principles, and we'll put this in your inbox because you need it for the next technique. And here it is. memorize those 9 principles.
Now, I've never been very good at memorizing, so a lot of times I use a cheat sheet with the words.
And it's okay to use a cheat sheet too, but I say memorize them because if you will go to the effort of committing to your mind and your memory the principles that are on this sheet, these are guaranteed to save your marriage, but it comes with a warning.
I know the warning.
What's the warning, Vicki?
They're tools to be used for your own brain, mind hack, etc., right? To be applied to
Yes.
your own way of thinking, not to apply them to the other. You can really cause a lot of harm to other people if you're trying to, you're not being this way or that way or following this principle. That generally does not bring about an improved relationship.
Well, an example on the list is respect.
Right.
And I might say, Vicki, you're not respecting me. How does that feel?
Judgmental.
Right, and then you're going to get defensive, maybe do a little counterattack, and then we're off to the races.
Right.
So they are for personal use only.
Right.
These 9 principles, this might go contrary to some things that you might be thinking.
But if you think back to the other principles, that goes back to earlier techniques. The story I'm telling myself right now is that I'm not being respected. That's different than you're not respecting me, right? So you can go back to the story that you're telling. We're not saying that you can't have conflicts and stand up for things that are really important for yourself. That is otherwise you're not showing up as a true person, and then who's this marriage between? Fake people?
You know, in 30 years now of clinical practice, I've worked with a lot of couples. You can't shock me. I've heard some of the darndest crap you can imagine. And I've noticed this. When it comes to the 9 principles, they're very basic but powerful tools. And what I've noticed is we get tempted to think this, you know, this marriage would sure be a lot better if Vicki would just... And then I go to the 9 principles. Be more forgiving, more respectful, more loving, more compassionate. The reason it's tempting to think that is because it's true. It is. This would be better if she would shape up. But how are you feeling right now?
Yeah.
Criticized, defensive, right? So even though it's true, it's not useful. In order to use these 9 principles effectively, they are for personal use only. So you look at the list and you think to yourself, okay, what can I apply from this list that's going to make this situation better? How can I apply positivity or values or humility or forgiveness or respect? Go down the list. Now you're going to see 4 or 5 that your spouse could apply, and it's true, but it's not useful. I need to focus on what I can apply there. So, trick question, Vicki. If this marriage is going to improve, it's up to?
Me.
Yes, she got the answer right. But you can ask me now.
Right. If this marriage is going to improve, it's up to?
It's up to me, absolutely.
Right.
You were afraid I was going to agree with you, huh? Can you save this marriage from divorce? Absolutely. How are you going to do it? Let's get those 9 principles in your hands. You ready? drpauljenkins.com/9principles. We'll put it right in your inbox. You're welcome.